We all have stories to tell that help connect us to our past. I came to Ohio last year from Pennsylvania in the eastern part. I grew up on a farm that had been in our family for generations. My ancestors came from Alsace, Germany to Ravine, Pennsylvania in the mid-1700s. Now for years, a lot of years of family reunions, a lot of the family from different states and different parts of the state had gathered information from their ancestors, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, great-grandparents. They've been gathering this information to put together to tell a full family story. Some of the stories are backed up by historical facts, but others seem to be more vague, and they seem to be legends because there were other families telling similar stories, and it just didn't seem more like it was a story or a legend that was passed from family to family. All of this data was finally collected and put together in a hardcover book published by Dr. David Leininger, and the book was available to be purchased, and so I bought one. And as I read through the book, I learned that I was related to 3/4 of the people in a small town in Pennsylvania. You can't talk about anybody else when you live in a small town. In the last few years, we've been given the gifts of Ancestry.com and 23andMe. And my niece, who is a biologist, loves these things. She loves anything to do with biology. Both of them use DNA samples to identify our origin. I learned that along with the strong German background, I have some threads of my grandmother's Welsh-Irish heritage going through. And if you look at a family picture, you can see that Nanny and I have the same nose. Part of my story as a minister, is that I served, one of my last churches I served was a small church by the name of St. Matthew's. And the land on which that church was built belonged to one of my relatives, who sold the land for $1 to the people that wanted to build a church, so the church could be built 208 years ago. And I kind of felt that as my time in Pennsylvania came to an end, as my ministry came to an end, I really had come full circle just before I retired and moved here. Now the Deuteronomy text tells the continuing story of people who have also come full circle. Each year at harvest, when they make their offering, the story is told that their ancestor had been a wanderer, a person who had relied on other people to help him find his way. These people, these landowners, farmers, are now carrying out their part of the history of their people, reciting the words of Moses, reciting the words that Moses gave them as part of this ritual offering. They will always remember who they once were, and yet appreciate who they have become and what they've done to pass on this faith to the next generations. The words remind them that even when life was difficult and different, God had been gracious to them as they wandered in a strange land. And now, on the land that they owned, they have their turn to be a blessing, the host to other people still wandering and trying to find their own way. As hosts, they would show similar hospitality to their guests in this land of blessing and abundance. God has been with them, and God has always been faithful. So they, in turn, will be faithful to the God of so that the God of their ancestors is known among all future generations. God continues to be with God's people today in the gospel as Jesus proves his identity as the Son of God over and over again to the people in John's gospel. He offers healing, he offers teaching, he offers a meal of abundance by blessing and breaking bread that will feed thousands of people. And still the people don't understand that the God that they seek and the God who calls them to God's self is the same Jesus who's already given them fact and proof of his identity. Give us signs, they plead. Give us bread. Give us answers so that we can believe in you. Our ancestors ate manna in the wilderness. It's even written that he gave them bread from heaven to eat. And Jesus has to explain, you don't understand. Your ancestor Moses could not give you bread from heaven. Only God could give you bread from heaven. It was God who gave the manna and sustained your ancestors through their time in the desert. And so their conversation continues, but it goes in circles as Jesus explains to them about heavenly things, but their minds continue to be more concerned with earthly things. Jesus gives what they need, but they aren't ready to surrender themselves to God in the way that God requires. In a world of immigrants, we all have a story to tell about how we came to be who we are and the land from which we came. But as the people of God today gathered in thanksgiving, we celebrate the gift of God's love for all of God's creation, a love that sustained our ancestors and will sustain us through all the days of our lives. Amen.